I'm not signing that. Wade Holloway placed the tablet back on the workbench. Around him, Asteron Mobility's prototype bay was already dressed for visitors. Fresh floor markings ran beneath bright overhead lights. Temporary barriers separated the demonstration area from the production floor. Behind them sat the AX-7, a $40 million electric hybrid transport prototype scheduled to run for investors that morning. Wade had spent 14 months helping build it. Now one yellow inspection box on his screen was asking him to pretend he knew something he didn't. Russell Pike, vice president of prototype operations, lowered his voice. The issue was closed yesterday. On paper, engineering couldn't reproduce it. That doesn't make it resolved. Wade pointed toward the AX-7. 3 times that week, the prototype had hesitated during the transition from external test power to onboard power. Twice, Wade had documented it. Twice, the work order had returned marked resolved after a successful retest. This morning it happened again. Russell glanced toward the glass conference room overlooking the floor. CEO Marissa Keene had arrived. Wade checked his phone. A text from his 13-year-old son, Owen, waited on the screen. Roof guy says he can come Saturday. Are we still doing it? Wade stared at the message. The November wind had already found its way through the loose flashing above Owen's bedroom. Another winter storm would make the repair harder and more expensive. Wade typed, "Yeah, we're doing it." He hoped that was true. If you've ever had to choose between protecting your paycheck and saying something people didn't want to hear, tell me your age, where you're watching from, and whether you've faced anything like it. Wade. Russell tapped the tablet. I need the sign-off. Wade looked at the yellow box. His flaw had never been silence. If anything, he had become too comfortable assuming that once he documented a problem, the paperwork should speak for him. When supervisors pushed back, Wade got shorter, sharper, sometimes sarcastic. Today he had no room for that. I can sign that I inspected it, he said. I can sign that it passed the last retest. I cannot sign that the condition is resolved. 20 minutes later, Marissa Keene stood across from him. At 37, she had built her reputation on making decisions quickly. Her charcoal suit was partly hidden beneath a dark wool coat she had not yet removed after coming in from the cold. She held a summary Wade had never seen. It says this condition was resolved twice. Then the summary is wrong. Russell stiffened. Marissa's expression did not. You've also refused the assigned closeout. I refused one word. Which word? Resolved. Marissa studied him. Wade could have softened his answer. He could have signed, collected his paycheck, repaired the roof, and let somebody above him own whatever happened next. Instead, he said, nobody has explained why it keeps coming back. Marissa looked at the executive dashboard, then at the mechanics standing in front of her. One showed a completed problem. The other refused to agree. She made her decision. Turn in your badge, Mr. Holloway. The factory seemed quieter than it had a second earlier. Wade unclipped the badge from his belt. Before placing it on the workbench, he looked once at the AX-7. Then somebody should ask who keeps closing a problem nobody fixed. Wade carried 14 years of Asteron Mobility in a cardboard box that had once held printer paper, 2 socket extensions, a faded coffee mug Owen had given him for Father's Day, work gloves, safety glasses, a photograph of his son at age 9, grinning through a missing front tooth. His badge was not in the box. That stayed behind. Outside, the Columbus wind cut across the employee parking lot hard enough to make Wade pull his brown work jacket closed. The sky was flat gray, the kind of November morning that looked like afternoon before lunch. He reached his pickup and put the box on the passenger seat. Then he called Owen. His son answered on the 4th ring. Aren't you working? Not anymore. Silence. Wade leaned against the truck. I got fired. For what? Wade looked back at the facility. They wanted me to close an inspection item. I wouldn't. Because it was broken? That's the problem. I don't know if it's broken. Owen sounded confused. Then why wouldn't you close it? Because I don't know why it keeps happening. Another pause. Did you do something wrong? That question landed harder than the firing. Wade could have given his son the clean version. No. Your dad stood up for what was right. But Wade knew life was rarely that convenient. I got angry, he said. I've been short with people. I probably made it harder for them to hear me. But were you wrong? I don't know yet. Wade looked at the cardboard box. I just know I wasn't willing to write down something I couldn't prove. What about the roof? There it was. Not justice. Not professional integrity. The roof. Real life. We'll figure it out. Wade hated the phrase as soon as he said it. Parents used it when they wanted children to feel safe before they had any idea what the answer was. Inside Asteron, the demonstration area filled with visitors. Marissa Keene had removed her wool coat and stood behind the safety barrier with Russell Pike, two board representatives and executives from a fleet company considering a major partnership. The morning had already gone off schedule. She refused to let that show. "Ready?" she asked. Russell glanced toward the engineering team. A technician gave the signal. "Ready." Marissa nodded. "Proceed." The AX-7 came alive. Interior displays illuminated. Cooling systems initialized. Status indicators populated across the monitoring screens. Then the startup authorization stopped. No drive-ready confirmation. An engineer frowned. "Hold." The room went quiet. He reset the sequence according to procedure. They tried again. Same result. Marissa looked at Russell. "What changed?" "We're checking." One engineer leaned toward another monitor. "That wasn't happening yesterday." Russell's eyes moved toward the far end of the factory, toward the exit Wade had used 6 minutes earlier. Marissa saw the look. "Don't." Russell turned to her. "Don't what?" "Decide the answer before we have evidence." A third attempt was canceled before it began. Engineering requested time to review the condition. Marissa looked through the glass at the $40 million prototype sitting perfectly still beneath the demonstration. Lights. Minutes earlier, she had believed she had removed an employee who was preventing the program from moving forward. Now the program was not moving at all. In the parking lot, Wade had just opened his truck door when his phone rang. The caller ID said Asteron Mobility. He stared at it. For 1 second, he considered letting it go to voicemail. Then he answered. "Wade Holloway." Russell's voice came through. "The AX-7 won't enter startup authorization." Wade closed his eyes. Not satisfaction. Not surprise. Just a tired recognition that the question he had refused to close was still waiting for an answer. Russell continued. "We need you to come back inside." Wade looked at the facility. Then at Owen's Father's Day mug sitting crooked in the cardboard box. "For what?" "To help us start it." Wade's hand tightened around the phone. "No." Russell went silent. Wade looked once more at the building where he had worked for 14 years. "If that machine needs the guy you fired 6 minutes ago just to start," he said, "then you've got a much bigger problem than me." The call ended, but Russell kept the phone against his ear for another second. "He won't come back," he said. Marissa stood beside the silent AX-7. "What exactly did you ask him to do?" "Help us get it started." "That wasn't my question." Russell lowered the phone. One of the engineers looked over from the diagnostic station. Marissa turned to him. "What do we know?" "The startup authorization is stopping at the same transition Holloway documented this morning." "Did he change anything before leaving?" "We're checking." Russell stepped closer. He was the last mechanic working that inspection item. The implication was obvious. Marissa looked at him. "Being last is not evidence." "I'm saying we need to consider the possibility." "Then consider it with records." Across the factory floor, the demonstration guests were being escorted toward a conference room. Nobody used the word failure. They called it a technical delay. Marissa had spent enough years in corporate operations to know how quickly language could become camouflage. "Freeze the current configuration," she said. "No unnecessary changes until." "We know what happened." The engineering lead nodded. They compared yesterday's successful test configuration against that morning's work. No unauthorized software changes. No disconnected hardware. No missing component. No evidence that Wade had deliberately done anything to prevent startup. Instead, the failure pointed back to an existing work order, the same one Wade had refused to close. Marissa read the number. "Who opened this?" "Holloway." "When?" "First entry was 8 days ago." She looked at Russell. "You told me this was resolved twice." "It was cleared after successful retests." "That's not what I asked." Russell's jaw tightened. Marissa turned back to the engineer. "Show me the original report." A minute later, the screen displayed Wade's entry. Intermittent startup authorization interruption during power transition. Root cause not confirmed. Marissa read it twice. Nothing in the wording sounded insubordinate. Nothing said the prototype could never operate. It said one thing clearly. They did not know why the condition occurred. "Call him again," Russell said. "He knows the workaround." Marissa looked at him. "What workaround?" Russell hesitated. That hesitation mattered. He's gotten it through the sequence before. "How?" "I don't know the exact steps." Marissa's expression hardened. So you want me to bring back the man I fired because our records say his concern was resolved, so he can perform a procedure our records apparently don't contain? Nobody answered. Marissa picked up her phone herself. Wade answered after 3 rings. If this is about coming back to start it, my answer hasn't changed. It isn't. He waited. I need the work order numbers connected to the condition you raised. Another pause. Then Wade gave her 4 numbers from memory. Marissa wrote them down. Anything else? Yes. What? Read the first version. Marissa glanced at the screen in front of her. I am. No, Wade said. I mean the first version of every one of them. Marissa stopped writing. Wade continued. I kept reporting the same condition. Every time it came back to me, the wording was different. Different how? You have the system. His voice carried no triumph, only exhaustion. Look. The call ended. Marissa entered the second work order number, then the third. By the fourth, she was no longer looking at the prototype. She was looking at the trail of information that had reached her desk. And for the first time that morning, the $40 million machine was no longer the problem she understood least. Marissa opened the first work order beside the executive summary she had reviewed before firing Wade. The difference was small enough to look harmless. That made it worse. Wade's original entry read, intermittent, root cause not confirmed. A supervisor revision 2 days later read, condition not reproduced during follow-up test. The weekly summary showed, resolved. Marissa leaned closer to the monitor. 3 statements. Only the first 2 were technically compatible. The third claimed something neither of them proved. Who changed it? She asked. Russell stood behind her. The system tracks revisions. Pull them. A quality coordinator brought up the audit history. No dramatic deletion appeared. No forged signature. The wording had changed through ordinary approvals. A team supervisor updated the first report after a successful retest. Prototype operations then classified the condition as closed because it had not repeated. The executive reporting software translated closed items into a green status category. By the time Marissa saw it, uncertainty had become certainty. Nobody had needed to lie. The process had done the cleaning for them. Marissa opened Wade's second work order. Same pattern. His third was worse. Wade had written, recurred during power transition. Request engineering review before final closeout. Intermittent condition not reproduced after reset. Executive status, closed, no active defect. Marissa sat back. When did we start measuring open defects by department? Russell did not answer immediately. 6 months ago. Whose metric? Prototype operations proposed it. And who approved it? Russell looked at her. You did. The answer stayed between them. Marissa remembered the meeting. Too many unresolved items. Missed milestones. Investors asking why development dates kept slipping. She had wanted cleaner accountability. So leadership tied management performance reviews partly to milestone completion and unresolved defect counts. It had looked sensible on a slide. What happens to a department manager when defects stay open near a demonstration milestone? It affects performance scoring. Bonuses. In some cases. Marissa turned toward him. Did you tell supervisors to close unresolved defects? No, did anyone? Not that I know of. That answer should have relieved her. It didn't. She looked again at the green status box. You did not have to order people to hide bad news if the system repeatedly rewarded them for making bad news disappear. Across town, Wade sat in his pickup outside a hardware store. He had driven there without thinking. The roof estimate was folded inside his jacket pocket. He took it out. Materials. Labor. Flashing replacement. A number he could manage yesterday. A number that looked very different without next Friday's paycheck. His phone rang. For one hopeful second, he thought it might be another employer returning a call he had not even made yet. It was a coworker. Wade let it ring, then answered. Hey, Marcus. You hearing what's happening? I'm trying not to. They're saying the demo's shut down. Wade rubbed his forehead. Then let engineering work. People are also saying you did something. Wade went still. What? Not officially. Just talk. The cold seemed sharper inside the truck. Wade looked through the windshield at shoppers carrying lumber and insulation toward their cars. 14 years in one building, and it had taken less than an hour for uncertainty to become suspicion. Marcus, listen to me. I didn't touch anything outside the inspection work. I know. You know because you saw it? No. Then don't defend me because you like me. Tell them to check the records. Wade ended the call. That distinction mattered. He did not want loyalty to save him from evidence. He wanted evidence to make loyalty unnecessary. Back at Asteron, Marissa asked the quality coordinator to pull every revision connected to Wade's 4 work orders. Russell exhaled. We have investors waiting. They can wait. We can isolate the startup issue first. Marissa looked toward the AX-7 through the glass. That was exactly what she would have said an hour earlier. Fix the immediate problem. Protect the milestone. Keep moving. Instead, she pointed to Wade's original entry. If this says unresolved, and my dashboard says resolved, I need to know what happened between those 2 screens. Russell lowered his voice. Marissa, this could turn into something much bigger than one failed demonstration. She looked at him. I think it already has. On the monitor, another revision history appeared. Then another. The same words kept changing in different ways. Intermittent became unreproduced. Unreproduced became closed. Closed became resolved. And Marissa finally understood that Wade's refusal to sign one word that morning had never really been about one word. It was about what happened to the truth while it traveled upward. Marissa did not stop with Wade's work orders. Pull the raw defect history from the other prototype teams. The quality coordinator looked at Russell before touching the keyboard. Marissa noticed. Why are you looking at him? The coordinator swallowed. Prototype operations normally approves cross-team reviews. Today I'm approving it. Russell stepped forward. If you open every development record while we have a failed demonstration, we're going to create a second crisis before we understand the first. Marissa looked at the silent AX-7 through the glass. No, we're finding out whether the first crisis was already the second one. The search took 20 minutes. At first, nothing looked dramatic. Then Marissa found a thermal management report from another prototype team. A junior technician had documented an intermittent temperature fluctuation during a sustained load test. Original status: engineering review requested. 5 days later, condition not reproduced. Executive dashboard closed. Marissa opened another. A test operator had reported delayed control response under a specific transition condition. The vehicle passed the next test. The issue became inactive, then closed, then green. She opened another. This time the technical concern was less important. Then a sentence buried inside the employee's performance review. Needs improvement in schedule discipline and timely issue closure. Marissa stared at it. Who wrote this? Russell read the name. A team manager. Was the employee wrong? About what? The defect. Russell hesitated. It was eventually corrected during a later revision. Marissa turned toward him. So the problem was real. Yes. And keeping it open counted against the employee. Indirectly. There's nothing indirect about that sentence. Russell's patience finally cracked. You're acting like somebody designed this system to hide defects. Nobody did. Marissa looked at him. I know. That stopped him. She turned the monitor so he could see all 3 records. That's what worries me. Nobody had written a policy saying, very bad news. Nobody had sent an email saying, punish technicians who slow us down. Leadership had simply rewarded cleaner dashboards, fewer open defects, faster milestones, and predictable demonstrations. People had adapted, exactly as organizations always did. Marissa stood. How many employees have been disciplined for issue closure performance? Russell shook his head. That could take hours. Start counting. Across town, Wade sat at his kitchen table with the roof estimate, a legal pad, and his checking account open on his phone. Owen came through the door after school and dropped his backpack. You're home. Excellent observation. Owen looked at the work clothes Wade was still wearing. Then at the papers. They still haven't called you back? They called. And they wanted me to start the prototype. Owen's eyebrows lifted. Can you? Probably. So why didn't you? Wade leaned back. Because he needed the paycheck. Because the roof needed fixing. Because refusing to walk back into Asteron felt a lot more principled before he started calculating how many weeks they could live on savings. But that was not the whole answer. If I go back and make it work, Wade said, everybody gets to pretend the problem was me not being there. Owen sat across from him. Wasn't it? No, Wade tapped the table. That machine has engineers, technicians, software teams, test crews. It shouldn't depend on one mechanic remembering some trick. So what does it depend on? Wade thought about the 4 work order numbers he had given Marissa. People telling the truth about what they know. His phone rang. Marissa. Wade answered. I found the other reports, she said. He heard something different in her voice. Not apology. Something heavier. How many? I don't know yet. Wade looked at Owen. Marissa continued. You weren't the only employee whose unresolved concern became resolved before it reached leadership. Wade closed his eyes. He had wanted proof that he had been treated unfairly. Instead, he felt sick. Because proof had just made the story bigger than him. How many? He asked again. Enough that I'm suspending the demonstration. Wade opened his eyes. The investors? Can wait. The fleet people? They can wait too. Silence settled between them. Then Marissa said, I approve the metric. Wade did not understand at first. What metric? The one rewarding departments for reducing open defects near milestones. She let the sentence sit. Russell had enforced it. Managers had adapted to it. Supervisors had learned what green dashboards were worth. But Marissa had approved the pressure that flowed downward. For the first time since being fired, Wade no longer had a simple person to blame. Neither did she. Marissa looked across the factory at rows of employees who had spent months learning which problems helped their careers when solved, and hurt them when they stayed honestly unresolved. The AX-7 still had not moved. But the real failure was no longer sitting under the demonstration lights. It was spread across years of reports, reviews, incentives, and decisions made by people who had never believed they were hiding anything. And fixing that would be much harder than starting one machine. The offer arrived the next morning in a conference room Wade had never entered during his 14 years at Asteron. He sat at one end of a polished table, wearing the same brown work jacket he had worn home the day before. Marissa sat across from him in a navy suit, a folder closed beneath her hands. Beside her were an attorney from corporate legal and Asteron's head of human resources. Wade looked at the empty chairs. Where's Russell? This meeting isn't about Russell, Marissa said. That answer told him more than she intended. The attorney opened a folder. Asteron was prepared to reverse Wade's termination, restore his seniority, compensate him for the missed time, and return him to the prototype team immediately. There was also a confidentiality agreement. Wade read the first page twice. The numbers mattered. He wished they didn't. The roof estimate was still on his kitchen table. His savings could cover the repair, but not comfortably. Owen needed braces before spring. Losing employer health coverage, even temporarily, was another problem Wade had avoided calculating the night before. Marissa watched him. This is not being offered in exchange for you starting the AX-7. Wade looked up. Then why is it being offered? Because the basis for your termination is under review. Under review? The HR director shifted slightly. Marissa did not. I made the decision to fire you using information that did not accurately represent the status of your reports. Wade leaned back. It was the closest thing to an apology anyone in the room had offered. It still bothered him. What happens if I sign? You return to work, the attorney said. And the other reports? The company is conducting an internal review. That wasn't my question. Marissa recognized her own words from the day before. Wade continued. What happens to the technician who got written up for keeping a real defect open? What happens to the test operator whose report turned green because the next test passed? The attorney answered carefully. Those matters are outside the scope of your employment resolution. Wade looked at the agreement again. There it was. A clean solution. His job restored. His immediate financial problem reduced. His name repaired inside the company. And everything else moved into another folder. I need a minute. Marissa dismissed the others. When the door closed, Wade stayed seated. You should take the offer, she said. He looked at her. That's an interesting sales pitch. I mean financially. So do I. Marissa glanced toward the window overlooking the factory floor. The AX-7 demonstration is suspended. Engineering is investigating the startup condition independently. Nobody is asking you to fix it. Good. I thought you'd be happier about that. I got fired yesterday. That's fair. Wade rubbed his thumb along the edge of the agreement. You know what I kept thinking last night? Marissa waited. That if I'd explained myself better, maybe this wouldn't have happened. You did explain yourself. Not always. He looked down. After a while, I stopped explaining. I'd write the ticket, somebody would close it, and I'd get sarcastic. Started assuming everyone upstairs either didn't care or didn't want to know. That doesn't justify what happened. I didn't say it did. Wade looked at her. But if we're figuring out how information gets lost, I'm not going to pretend I was great at making people want to hear me. Marissa was quiet. That was the first thing Wade had said that did not fit neatly into victim and offender. He tapped the folder. This fixes yesterday for me. Yes. What fixes tomorrow for somebody else? Marissa had no immediate answer. Wade stood. I'm not signing this today. Her eyebrows rose. You're rejecting reinstatement? I'm saying I'm not signing a deal that closes my case before I understand whether closing my case helps close everything else. You have a son. The sentence came out before Marissa could stop it. Wade's expression changed. I know exactly who I have. I didn't mean, I know what you meant. He picked up his jacket. That's why this is hard. Outside, cold wind moved between the buildings as Wade crossed the visitor lot toward his pickup. His phone rang before he reached it. Owen, how'd it go? They offered my job back. That's good, right? Wade opened the truck, but didn't get in. I didn't take it. A long silence followed. You didn't? Not yet. Dad, the roof. I know. The braces. I know. Owen lowered his voice. Then why? Wade stared through the windshield at the Asteron building. Because they offered to fix what happened to me. Isn't that what you wanted? Yesterday, yes. Yesterday Wade had. Wanted his record cleared, his paycheck restored, and somebody to admit he had not caused the prototype failure. Today those things felt smaller. Maybe I was asking for the wrong thing. Back inside, Marissa returned to the conference room. The attorney looked at the unsigned agreement. He declined. He hasn't accepted. We can improve the terms. Marissa shook her head. I don't think the terms are the problem. Her phone buzzed with a message from the board chair. Can we separate the AX7 recovery from the reporting review? Need demonstration timeline by noon. Marissa read it twice. Yesterday, she would have answered with a date. Today she looked through the glass at the silent prototype. Then she opened the raw defect audit. There were 43 flagged records waiting for review. Not 43 confirmed failures. 43 places where the original language and the executive status did not cleanly match. She thought about Wade's question. What happens to everyone whose name isn't on today's problem? Marissa typed a reply to the board chair. No revised demonstration date yet. Reporting integrity is now part of the AX7 readiness review. She pressed send. For the first time since becoming CEO, Marissa deliberately made the dashboard worse. More open issues. More uncertainty. More red. And for the first time in months, the screen was beginning to tell the truth. Wade expected Marissa to ask him back to Asteron. Instead, she asked him to meet at a diner 6 blocks from the plant. He arrived first, still wearing his brown work jacket. Marissa came in 5 minutes later, carrying no laptop and no legal folder. Outside, a cold November drizzle streaked the windows. She sat across from him. I found 43 records with status changes that need review. Wade stopped stirring his coffee. 43. Some may be legitimate. Some may not be. I'm done guessing. She placed a single sheet of paper between them. It contained work order numbers. Do you recognize these? Wade scanned the list. A few. I need help reconstructing what happened on the floor. Not fixing the AX7. Wade looked at her. Why me? Because the reports tell me what was entered. They don't tell me what people believed when they entered it. That distinction mattered. Wade took a breath. I kept notes. Marissa waited. Nothing proprietary, he added. Dates. Work order numbers. Who I spoke to. Mostly because I got tired of hearing that I'd never raised something. Would you let the audit team see them? Wade hesitated. Those notes could prove what happened. They could also put names beside decisions. People he had worked beside for years. Some had mortgages. Kids. Medical bills. The same reasons Wade himself had stayed quiet longer than he liked admitting. I don't want this turned into a list of people to fire. Neither do I. You fired me yesterday. Marissa accepted that without defending herself. Yes. The answer took some heat out of him. She looked down at the work order sheet. I trusted summaries because I thought good systems turn complicated information into decisions. They're supposed to. I forgot they can also remove the part that makes the decision difficult. Wade stared into his coffee. I wasn't exactly helping. Marissa frowned. You documented the issue. And then I got tired. He looked at her. After the third or fourth time something came back closed, I stopped walking people through it. I'd write another ticket. Make some smart remark. Tell myself management didn't care. That doesn't make the reporting system your fault. No, but it made me easier to dismiss. For the first time, neither of them was trying to decide who had been more wrong. Wade took the paper. I'll give the audit team my references. Marissa nodded. But there's a condition. What? If somebody changed wording, ask why before you decide they were dishonest. Marissa studied him. You're protecting the people who changed your reports? I'm protecting the truth. He folded the paper once. If a supervisor changed something because his bonus depended on closing tickets, that matters. If he changed it because he misunderstood what engineering told him, that matters too. If somebody actually lied, prove that. Marissa nodded slowly. Fair. Wade stood. There's one more thing. She looked up. If you take this to the board, don't make me the story. You were fired over it. That's exactly why they'll want to make me the story. He pulled on his jacket. One mechanic gets fired, CEO discovers mistake, mechanic gets his job back. Nice clean ending. Marissa understood. And the system stays the same. Wade nodded. Outside, the drizzle had turned to cold rain. Marissa watched him cross the parking lot. For 14 years, Wade had believed his responsibility ended when he documented the truth. Marissa had believed hers began when that truth reached her desk. They had both just discovered the dangerous space between those 2 points. And now they were going to have to walk through it together. The emergency board review began at 7:10 the next morning. Through the conference room windows, Wade could see the EX-7 sitting beneath the prototype bay lights. Engineers had identified the immediate startup condition and were working through the approved correction, but Marissa had refused to schedule another demonstration. The machine was no longer the only item under review. Wade sat beside an internal audit representative, not beside management. Across the table, Russell Pike looked exhausted. The board chair tapped the report. Engineering believes the AX-7 issue can be corrected today. Yes, Marissa said. Then why are we discussing a program suspension? Marissa connected her laptop to the display. 3 versions of the same work order appeared. Root cause not confirmed. Then, condition not reproduced. Then, resolved. Nobody spoke. Marissa advanced to another record. Then another. This is not evidence that every closed defect was improperly handled, she said. It is evidence that our executive reporting process can remove technical uncertainty as information moves upward. Russell leaned forward. We had targets. We were expected to meet them. I know. You approved those targets. I know that too. Marissa did not look away. That answer changed the room. She could have blamed prototype operations. She could have made Russell the explanation and protected herself. Instead, she displayed the metric she had approved 6 months earlier. Open defects. Milestone completion. Department performance. We created pressure to reduce all 3, she said. Then we treated the resulting dashboard as objective truth. The board chair looked toward Wade. Mr. Holloway, what are you asking the company to do? Wade had thought about that question all night. He could ask for his job. He could ask for Russell's. Neither answer seemed large enough anymore. First, Wade said, if a frontline technician flags an unresolved functional or safety condition, management shouldn't be able to turn it into resolved without a documented technical disposition. A board member began writing. Second, the executive dashboard should show the original defect status alongside whatever summary management adds. Russell shook his head. That will flood leadership with unresolved items. Then build a better filter, Wade said. Don't change what the item means. The room went quiet again. And third, Wade looked at Marissa. If somebody gets disciplined after escalating an unresolved prototype condition, there should be an independent review before that discipline becomes final. The board chair removed his glasses. That creates delay. Yes. It could affect launch schedules. Yes. It could affect the fleet contract. Wade nodded. I know. The chair looked at Marissa. We can repair the AX-7 now and conduct this review separately. That gets the demonstration back on schedule. For several seconds, Marissa said nothing. Outside the conference room, technicians moved around the prototype. From a distance, everything looked normal again. That was the temptation. Fix the machine. Move the meeting. Clean the dashboard. Promise to investigate later. Marissa looked at the AX-7, then at the reports on the screen. No, the board chair frowned. No. We do not demonstrate it until the reporting audit and readiness review are complete. That could cost us the customer. It could. And you're willing to accept that? Marissa's voice remained steady. I'm willing to accept that I cannot certify a development process I now know was giving me distorted information. Russell stared at the table. The board chair leaned back. This decision will be attached to you. It should be. Wade looked at her. There was no victory in the room. No applause. No dramatic order to fire Russell. just consequences finally moving in more than one direction. The board approved the temporary suspension pending an expanded review. The AX-7 would remain grounded from demonstration use even after the immediate startup problem was corrected. When the meeting ended, Wade gathered his notes. Marissa approached him. "You could still take the reinstatement." Wade looked through the glass at the prototype. "Maybe. That's not much of an answer. It's the honest one." She almost smiled. Wade slipped the notebook into his jacket. A $40 million machine sat silent 20 yards away, technically closer to running than it had been the day before. But nobody in the building was pretending that starting it was the same thing as solving the problem. For once, leaving something officially unresolved was not being treated as failure. It was being treated as the truth. 3 weeks later, Wade returned to Asteron carrying nothing but an envelope. No toolbox. No cardboard box. No expectation that someone would meet him at the door with a new title. The November morning was colder now. Wade wore his brown work jacket over a gray flannel shirt, and traces of the season's first light snow clung to the edges of the visitor lot. Inside, the AX-7 was running again. Engineering had traced the startup condition, corrected it, and completed the required validation. But the demonstration had remained suspended until the reporting audit was finished. That delay had cost Asteron. A fleet customer postponed its decision. The board placed additional oversight on Marissa's development reporting. Russell remained with the company during the accountability review, but he no longer controlled the defect metrics that had encouraged managers to make unresolved problems disappear. There had been no single villain to remove. That was the uncomfortable part. Marissa had approved the metrics. Russell had enforced them. Supervisors had adapted to them. Wade had grown frustrated enough that he sometimes stopped explaining and assumed paperwork would speak for him. The system had been built from many ordinary decisions, so repairing it required more than one dramatic apology. Wade walked down the administrative hallway after finishing paperwork related to his termination review. He still had not accepted reinstatement. Another manufacturing company had asked him to interview, and for the first time in 14 years, he was allowing himself to consider working somewhere else. His future remained uncertain. Then he heard voices from an open workstation area. A young technician stood beside a supervisor, studying a test report. "Can we close it?" the supervisor asked. The technician hesitated. Wade slowed. "I can't reproduce it now," the young man said. "But I don't know what caused the original reading." The supervisor looked at the screen. 3 weeks earlier, Wade knew exactly how that conversation might have ended. He waited. The technician swallowed. "No, not yet." The supervisor nodded. "Okay. Escalate it for independent review. Keep the original status attached." That was all. No applause. No speech. Nobody knew Wade was listening. Across the hallway, Marissa stepped out of another meeting and noticed him. Then she heard the supervisor. Their eyes met. Wade gave one small nod. Marissa returned it. For all the money invested in the AX-7, that quiet exchange at an ordinary workstation may have been the most valuable thing Asteron produced that month. Because respect is easy to talk about when someone becomes useful to us. The harder test is whether we respect people before we know what they can do for us. A wealthy CEO does not become more human because she controls millions of dollars. A mechanic does not become less human because he wears work boots instead of an expensive suit. A person's paycheck, neighborhood, education, title, or bank balance may tell us something about circumstances, but none of those things measures the amount of dignity that person deserves. Poor people should not have to reveal extraordinary talent before others decide they are worthy of being heard. And wealthy people should not automatically be reduced to stereotypes of arrogance or greed either. People are more complicated than the categories we put them in. Marissa had made a serious mistake. Wade had flaws of his own. What mattered was what they chose after the mistake became impossible to ignore. Wade left the building and drove to Owen's school. His son climbed into the pickup and tossed his backpack behind the seat. So what? Are you going back?" Wade started the engine. "I haven't decided." Owen frowned. "You still don't know?" "Nope." "What about the roof?" "Contractor starts Saturday." "The braces?" "We'll figure those out too." Owen smiled. As they pulled away, Wade looked once in the rearview mirror at the Asteron building shrinking behind them. He had entered that place 3 weeks earlier believing justice meant getting his own job back. He understood it differently now. His name being cleared mattered. His livelihood mattered. But if everything ended with Wade Holloway receiving an apology while the next worker learned to stay quiet, nothing important would have changed. Back inside Asteron, one unresolved issue remained openly marked unresolved. No one had turned it green to make the dashboard prettier. No one had punished the technician who refused to pretend. And sometimes the clearest evidence that a system has finally learned to respect people is remarkably simple. The next person is allowed to tell the truth.